great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision Bill Fisher. Their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher. Our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. And our Batman, the master of tools, gadgets, and all things mechanical. Our mild-mannered soon-to-be billionaire, Alan Danvers. Their mission, to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them, and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
All right, we're back at the, let's see, what are we going to say this is? The KOA recording studio in Traverse City.
Michigan,
which is on the way home, not from GingerMan. If you go the long way, like 36,000 miles around the world. So we ended up redoing our plans, and we are now reporting in live from Traverse City, Michigan, and going to go over our HPDE at GingerMan, Jennifer and Vicki's first ever with NASA Great Lakes. So first off, what would you say this HPDE was compared to the two other HPDEs you've done, which were with NASA Northeast and Hooked on Driving?
Sure. I thought the classroom was much different. It was, I don't know, it was more, I think structured. That's the perfect word, structured. It was way more structured than the last one that we did. So yeah, I think that was the biggest difference for me.
So the nice thing about this HPDE is that it was done in slides, and we came with booklets of those slides. We were able to take notes with it, and it was very digestible. So, and it was also very segmented. So moving forward from the very beginning in sections, and then progressing in the sections. So it made it easy to learn. And they didn't overcomplicate things in one, although they did very much challenge you when you're on the track.
So this was the first HPDE that you both have gone to that had on-track drills. What did you think of on-track drills?
The on-track drills were a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I found that it had benefits to both in-car and follow behind. I liked the follow behind in an aspect of I was able to see what the driver ahead of me wanted me to do. Besides telling me what to do, I can actually visualize it. But there was a lot of things that, of course, that you would miss from not having that trainer in the seat next to you also.
Yeah, I agree with that. There certainly were some benefits of the lead follow. I don't know which one I prefer. But it was not. It was a nice change to be able to see what they were doing.
Why does it have to be either? Why can't it be both in the future?
Now there's an interesting concept.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I did notice, your HPDE 1, instead of having the ratio of instructors to students was much higher. You had many more instructors. It was basically one instructor to 2 or 3 students. Mm-hmm. So did you like that? Did that help? Did that hurt?
I got along very well with my partner and my instructor. I think that we were a little advanced. We were higher up in level 1. And I believe that probably my partner, I believe that whether he completes 1 more or 2 more, he will be leveling up. But we were able to keep up with each other very well.
I had 3 in my group, and I think 2 is a better number. I found that, I guess, being the last or the third student, you really couldn't see what the instructor was doing anyway. I mean, even being the second driver, you could still see what they were doing and follow their lines, or even if the person in front of you was off. So, but being the third person, you just couldn't really see anything. So
that would be 4 cars
in
a group,
3 students,
including the instructor. But because it was their first time around doing this. I was speaking to my instructor. He says, and I brought that up on my sister's behalf to my instructor. And he says, we just learned this yesterday, that some of this is how we were going to kind of be panning it out because they've been tossing around a lot. But telling them of that kind of glitch, the other people that were carrying 3 students were also having the same issues. So they made those adjustments the next day, and I believe it was a lot better.
Yeah, it was absolutely a lot better. So there ended up only being 2 in my group on Sunday. So that worked out much, much better. We were able to keep up with one another, and yeah, it was good.
But I think ultimately, I believe that they paired off the students pretty well.
Okay, so you guys had goals going in. How did the goals going in compare to what you got out of it? Did you get what you expected? Was it better than you expected? Was it different? Give me something.
My instructor, we were working. I wouldn't say we were working on advanced stuff, but the stuff that they were bringing up later in the class, we were already doing, and trying to keep up with the speed levels. I didn't realize some of the problems that I was having. I was going in with one concept and then coming out with another. The first concept was basically, learning how to properly take a corner, how to, properly follow lines.
What were you doing in a corner that you weren't doing, or what were you doing that you should have been doing?
Well, we were working on late apexes, and actually late apexes on most corners are kind of preferred, especially driving a small car in my situation. So, and the way that my car is set up, which is a Miata
at your level,
at my level. So it kind of worked out, but overall I didn't do bad, although I was doing it, I believe, kind of sort of like at the upper level of the class. But we were really working on fine tuning. So I believe that he was kind of holding me and Tom to a little bit different standard. So my issue that I really had to work on was not so much trail braking. It was more throttle control. We were doing a lot of work on throttle control.
More than braking?
More than braking, because the braking really wasn't so much an issue for me as it was balancing the car and working more on throttle control and hitting the apex at the right point. Overall, those were more of my issues that he'd like me to see work on.
My goals, I guess, weren't as specific. I really just kind of wanted to feel more comfortable driving. I wanted to be consistent with driving a better line. And I know some people are like, well, what you do, you get in there and you have no line anyway. So, but I just kind of feel like if I know what I'm supposed to be doing right, then I'll recognize what I'm doing wrong. So I really just kind of wanted to focus on hitting corners at the right spot and kind of pushing the car that I was driving to, I think, what I was capable of doing.
Mine was more involved, where I was kind of losing it in the class a little bit, was the whole thing with the physics on setting the car and the throttle control and the brake control.
Weight control.
And weight control and proper tire. And as soon as they started doing that, I was, like one of those people that kind of look glassed over with all the math problems around their head. So it was a little bit difficult. So with the notebook that we had been given of the slideshow, I made a lot of notes of what I feel that I need to go in and study more focused on those mini topics of balance control and weight control and setting the car and how those shifts work. I really didn't understand the concept of certain things, so that's what I'll be pretty much studying, just so I can familiarize myself with it.
And how was yours, Bill?
Mine was fine. We'll get there. So that was awesome. That was exceptionally 5 minutes. Was it better or worse or what you expected when you went in?
It was better.
Why? How?
Again, I think it was
Structured.
The instruction. Yeah,
Progression, steps.
Is that what you're trying to get us to say? Progression and steps? Okay. So, I think Bill's trying to lead the questions a little bit. So, and he keeps flipping me off. So,
We're at it.
I believe, like I said earlier, it's more digestible. The way they have it set up, it's better. The instructors are very enthusiastic, and I believe that, all I could say was just digestible. I mean, it was easy to understand what they wanted you to do, but what they did in this one that they didn't do in the other ones that we have attended was that they actually did a mini cone course. Well, they turned the track into a little bit of a cone course so they can test our threshold braking, they can test our chicane reaction, slalom and chicane. They called it chicane. So, and then I believe it was throttle control is what they're working on, which worked out well for us. I mean, I really enjoyed that, and they did a couple laps of, when we had been going around the corner with the cones on trying to get the car. Yeah, I think it was throttle braking.
Yeah.
I don't know, but we had gone around the corner, and if you hit it just right with the cones,
braking.
right, if you hit it just right with the apex.
Rotation.
Right, with the apex, it was the rotation. If you hit it right with the apex, then the car would just kind of move around the corner. And that's what they wanted you to work on. They want apex control. So that really, really helped. And the other thing they did with this particular course was at the very, very end, it was a free-for-all little bit of racing the course in reverse.
Yeah, that was fun.
They referred to it as new track. And as soon as that happened, you didn't think too much about the track anymore, because hitting the track the same time all day, the same way, there was so much data going on in your head about trying to hit everything that you learned, but hitting that track in reverse, it's not that you forgot about it, it just kind of wiped the data part around and you were just able to focus on the track alone. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's like driving a new track.
Yeah.
Yep.
You didn't have to think about all those points that you were hitting.
One and two.
Right.
And during the reverse, we, for the first time in the weekend, we combined groups, HPDE 1 and HPDE 2. So I got to see some of the HPDE 1 people. I got to see some of them for a very, very, very long time, because apparently their left arm does not point by. But I got to see Jen for a little bit. I saw Vicki in the distance, getting further and further away from the people in front of me. But it is what it is. So, what were some of the big takeaways that you guys got from the HPD? Where did you learn most?
I mean, ultimately, it just relies on seat time.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that to practice at home, not in your race car, but just on your daily driving.
Just daily driving.
How?
Yeah. Braking. Yeah.
No, don't lazy brake. Just brake properly, which is apply the brakes without having that long 100-foot, I'm going to coast for 100 feet and then I'm going to gradually hit the brakes. No, they want you to ride it all the way up to a proper race distance, or just a distance, and then apply the brakes, threshold brake, and then go on. Look for apexes when you're out there. Become an apex demon, is what they kind of say. And just recognize basically stuff you learned in class. Look at the road, look at your surroundings, and see the road as a racetrack. Don't race it, but use your car with threshold braking and with throttle control.
And try to look as far as you can.
Exactly.
Through the cars and everything. So, what did you get better at? What did you improve on? What do you feel like you improved on?
Everything, really. I mean, like, I just appreciated the fact that they said there's nothing that's going to make you a better driver than actual seat time, and being in that capacity as far as seat time goes. I mean, I learned a lot again of what some stuff I already knew, like just a little bit more about it. So yeah, I just think I enjoyed having the seat time. I felt more comfortable after.
Yeah, I think seat time is the one. I had the idea in my head of what my big takeaway was, and I got so focused on Jennifer that it just kind of slipped my mind because I'm really tired. I know we were. It was a very, very busy weekend.
What did you improve on?
What did I improve on? Okay, I do know. Thank you for reminding me that. So, I think the thing that I improved on the most, and my big takeaway, was recognizing that the car can only do one thing at a time. For me, in my level. Mm-hmm. So if you are committing to braking, you commit to the brake, but you can't commit to the brake and the turn at the same time you're going to spin.
Right.
You cannot enter in full on unless you have the proper car, the proper, racing. Is that if you are caught in a turn early and you step on the gas, you still risk spinning that car. Mm-hmm. Your car can only do, with the weight transfers, one thing at a time, and you have to recognize that, because there's a lot of times when I felt the back end or feeling like I was going to lose control, I am not comfortable. At the very end, I think I did catch a little bit of a slide, and I have to get comfortable with the slide, but I believe that controlling the car was committing to one thing at a time. Mm-hmm. With the weight of the car. Mm-hmm. I still need to practice that, when to lift and then shift the weight of the vehicle so the nose doesn't dip down, the nose doesn't pop up. Those are the things I still want to work on.
Smooth.
Right. Mm-hmm. I would have to say.
Okay, so looking back on the weekend, what were 2 or 3 highlights for the weekend for you guys?
Well, number one was hanging out with my family and my sister. We're getting along fabulously. The highlights. I would say the highlight was just being on the track. I had a really good time on the track.
Yeah, just driving.
Yeah, I really had a good time. The other highlight that I had was hitting the apexes. I loved hitting the apexes. The other highlight was driving that track in reverse. Mm-hmm. Was a blast.
Did you enjoy hitting the apexes early or late?
I liked going in late.
Tell me why.
I like going in late to the apexes. I forget what that's called.
Late apexing.
Or late apex. Because it actually gave my car a little bit more control. Because my car being small and having a turbo, I was able to, for my particular vehicle, I was able to accelerate out of that corner faster, because when I stomped on it, the turbo would kick in and it would just take off. It doesn't always work with racing against other cars, but that's where my car, particularly, mine is a Flying Miata Turbo 99 and B. So
as in not bills.
Not bills. I have to keep doing that. So it actually had me accelerating out of that corner faster and earlier. So I was able to get a jump on a lot of things. But my difficulty with it is making sure to remind myself that I have to be in the proper gear once I get out on that, because sometimes I was in too high of a gear. So because I was so excited going down on this particular track, there was almost like a right angle at the very end of turn 11, I believe. And sometimes I was sailing down in 4th gear, 5th gear, and then I would just do my threshold braking, getting ready to do that late turn in, and I realized that I was still in 4th or 5th gear, and I would just bomb that turn. But I had to keep reminding myself that, I was just caught in the moment. I have to keep thinking ahead.
Favorite two?
Favorite two?
Or three?
Two what?
2 or 3 things that happened on the weekend.
Oh, the highlights.
Yeah.
Okay. I think one of the highlights for me was the track walk.
That's a good one.
It was long, but it was very, very, very informative. And I appreciated that Eric did not kind of insist there was one way to do one thing, that every person and every car is slightly different.
Somebody just drove through our studio.
I want to touch on that too.
Okay, well, go ahead.
The other thing about that track walk is that some of the coaches were out there on bicycles, and they said a really good read to get on a track walk beyond just the information that you would get from somebody in a learning process is to ride it with a bicycle, because then you can feel the elevations, you can see and feel it on the bike, on your apexes, you can ride it and know what your car's supposed to do.
Yeah, that was
a good one.
That really was. And there were a couple people that had bikes.
2 hours.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a 2-hour walk.
Yeah, it was a long walk.
That poor dog walking with us, he looked drained.
But informative.
Yes.
Yeah. That, and we had a really nice camp spot.
We did. We had a great camp spot.
We did. You could see the
wake up and see
track.
the cars coming down the track.
Yeah. And I liked going in reverse. That was definitely one of the highlights.
Took a lot of pressure off.
Yeah.
So let's do some differences between HPDE 1 and HPDE 2. I did both this weekend, so I got to see everything.
He did a twofer.
I did. Why? Why is it an or question when it could be an and? So passing was different. What was your passing rules?
We could only pass on the straightaways. No passing on the corners. Don't even attempt. And they actually set us up because they sent out a slow guy.
Eric.
One of the trainers, a slow guy, and he was given false point buys. And there was a lot of us who failed that test.
Yes, Eric was giving point buys going into a high braking zone.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Eric on ours decided that he was going to do point buys in the opposite direction that you would want, and then as you were there, he'd then squeeze you. So he would leave you one car width, but only one car width. Mm-hmm. So you'd be going there, and I'm sitting there going, just a lemons race, no big deal.
Yeah, we were advanced. We already knew how that worked.
Point buys for us, you had to do point buys. You weren't allowed to pass without a point buy, but we were allowed to pass anywhere on the track except for the 3 or 4 turns that had braking markers.
Reminder, it's GingerMan.
GingerMan.
Right.
So there's 3 or 4 turns at GingerMan that have braking markers. I'm just not going to go through the track map in my head and waste podcast time. So we were allowed to pass in a lot more places than you. It was very apparent that some of your group was not very comfortable with passing or point buys. So that was fun. Let's see, what else? Our drills were a little different. We had one drill where we had to go and pretend there was a car right next to us. So we had to go 2 wide throughout the entire track. So you'd stay all the way left or all the way right for an entire lap, but you had to keep your speed up. So the instructor would pace you. And then the other drill that we did, we had a passing drill. You'd have a line of one instructor with 4 or 5 cars behind it. And the last car had to quick hustle and pass everybody, fall behind the track instructor, and then just keep looping. There's a word for that in track that we're probably not allowed to say anymore. But so that was the 2 drills that we did. And in general, I think we had 1 classroom session in the morning each day. You guys had 3 or 4?
After every track, we had 4 turns on the track, right?
Yeah.
3. It was 3 during a day or 4 during a day, and
4 driving, 3 classrooms, I think.
Right. And after every drive, it was a quick download with our instructor, and then immediately went to the classroom. So I would say there was 4 classrooms on Saturday and 3 classrooms on Sunday.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it was very good.
Worth the drive?
Yes.
Yes. Yes,
Yes.
it's a really fun track. It really is a cool track to drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I believe the 4 pillars that they use for driving are vision, braking, throttle, and car control. I may not have that exactly right. But if you were to look at, now there's people biking through our podcast studio. So if you were to look at your driving, in your opinion, what is your weakest of those and what's your strongest? Vision, braking, throttle, and car control. By car control, I don't just mean controlling your car, but knowing what's around your car.
I pretty much need to work on all.
Strongest or weakest? If they break the driving down into 4 pillars, I think I have the pillars right, but I don't have my notes in front of me. So, vision, braking, throttle, and car control, car awareness, track awareness. What do you think you're strong in, and what do you think you're weak in? If you want to rate it in a 1 to 10 scale, that's fine. What do you think you are? And
I don't know.
Don't know.
I don't know.
Okay.
Because right now I'm learning all of it.
What do you think you need to work on the most?
All of it.
Okay, Jen.
All of it.
Okay. 2 highlights of the weekend we did. So when I was sitting in your class, one of the drills, you were coming around, it doesn't matter for the audience, but you're coming around turn 3, which is a turn that has a decreasing radius, and then they made the radius decrease even more with some cones. And you were supposed to come around with a little bit of slip and then lift a little bit so that the car would then get a little weight on the front nose and you would turn in tighter. They were trying to force you to do that. How did that drill go? I was curious how you guys did because I couldn't see it.
I was caught up in a line of cars, so it was a little tough to go.
No go?
No go.
So the slip, just trying to get comfortable with the slip. I'm never comfortable with the slip because I haven't experienced it enough.
I hate that our skid pad got canceled.
Yeah. Sad the skid pad got canceled. So, I mean, I kind of was more working on the apex as much as I could, more than the slip. They weren't really trying to get us to slide the car. So they just wanted to make sure that we hit the apex properly. And my issue is that I'm not tight enough in the apex.
Okay.
Right now, and I really have to practice that. And the other, again, is the throttle control. But yeah, I think that was my issue. I didn't have a problem with the braking. I didn't have a problem with the chicanes.
I guess, yeah, I didn't have a problem with the chicanes. I like that. That was fun. Yeah, I think car awareness is probably my worst.
Okay.
If I had to rate them.
Okay. Because mine is braking.
Yeah. No,
By far.
Definitely, like, sometimes you get so focused on everything else that you're doing that you kind of lose track of flag stations or, the car that's right behind you. So, yeah. That's good.
One of the issues when it comes to vision and looking further ahead when you're doing training with following your instructor is that you become so focused on what your instructor is doing so you can do it properly that it's really from the rear end of your driver's car, your instructor's car, and it was a constant challenge. So I think next time I would do this, I would put painter's tape on my window, a very thin strip of painter's tape on my window to make sure that I look up.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because it was very hard. And of course, Tom in my group.
Did they do that as a drill with you guys or no?
They did do that as a drill, but they put a line on there on your car that he used with
crayon. It was like a crayon.
Mine wasn't a crayon. Mine was like
Marker.
Eraser. It was like an eraser thing.
Yeah.
Eraser marker. But you really couldn't see it. But it was still very, very difficult to look further past your instructor because they wanted you right on your instructor's tail. And you're watching, you're so focused on what he's doing. But my partner, he was since he was a little bit more advanced than I, and he's raced that track. I mean, that was one of his main tracks. So he said that what he kept trying to do was look at his instructor as a car that he would try to pass. And that made him look up higher.
Okay. So, did you guys have any aha moments during the weekend? Like where something just kind of clicked and you kind of made a progression? Or something that you've always heard or somebody you've always talked about said, oh, I know what that is now and I can do that.
I go fast.
That's your aha moment?
Well, yes, it was, because I would had more confidence in going
she was
fast. And I wasn't afraid of the car once I committed to having the car only do one thing at one time.
I think probably going faster around corners.
Corners.
Yeah. Like the car wasn't going to roll over.
Did the back end of the car get loose or the front end get loose?
I was trying to do that. I really wanted to do that all weekend.
Mm-hmm. Not quite yet.
But they weren't going fast enough to go.
You have pretty grippy
Jennifer
tires.
kept getting stuck in traffic is what was happening.
That, and the car isn't as fast on the straightaway.
No.
As some of the cars in my group. Yeah, but going through the turns is where I wanted to go. I could go faster with the Miata because it just does so well. So, yeah.
Okay, so any times you guys went off track or black flags?
Nope.
Okay, very good. So we ran in-car video for this event for the first time with you guys driving in a long time. I think the only video we have of Vicki is from her first ever race. And I don't know if we have any video of Jennifer. So if I look at the
video,
which I have not done yet, because Vicki left the GoPro in the car that we don't have here. But if I were to look at the video, and if people were to go to the Garage Heroes in Training on YouTube page and look at the video, what would you think they see, and what would you think you'd be happy with, and what do you think they'd be sad with?
Well, gosh, everything, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
With my shifting.
Your shifting they'd be happy with?
No, they'd be embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for my shifting.
Yeah.
Because I kept messing up on my shifting.
Probably, yeah, shifting. Like, yeah.
Vicki, on this video, are they going to see you driving like a 22-year-old male down the strip of a beach with their left hand hanging on top of the wheel and their right hand fondling the stick?
Nope.
Only in turn 8.
because we got to see that for virtually an entire lap at NJMP, your first race. And
That is true. That was terrible. I'm so embarrassed.
I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I don't know.
No, like a year and a half later, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. That's embarrassing.
And yet we leave it up because we're just that way.
Because it's funny.
Right. Okay. So, favorite cars that you guys saw of the weekend? Anything stand out?
Yeah, there was a gentleman I met named Doug, and I believe he had a 66 Cobra, and it was navy.
White stripes, I think, right?
It was white stripes with a wooden steering wheel, and he had bought it not for racing, but he found out that he was only driving it like on Sundays, and he figured, hey, I think I will go ahead and do an event. And then he realized that he really liked it, so he's put 3,000 miles just racing on it right now. And
awesome.
It is very awesome. He was the sweetest little man ever. He really, really was. I really enjoyed talking to him.
Was that who you walked the track with?
I did.
God, you wouldn't shut up.
Huh?
The two of you.
Oh my gosh, we had so much fun talking. But his car is absolutely beautiful. And he's like, I know I shouldn't be doing this with this late model car, but I'm just having such a good time with it. I really should probably get a proper car for this, not running my classic, but I loved it.
And the correct answer is yes, you should be doing it with that car.
Don't enter lemons with it.
I like the orange car that you had.
Camaro?
Yes, that was a very pretty car.
That was a very pretty car.
Yeah.
That goes as a highlight for me. It was, I think it was a 68. It might have been a 69.
Yeah.
Might have been a 67. It was orange. And the guy was bawling that car around the
Really?
track. Oh, yeah. We put the video up, as you can see on our Instagram page. So, Jen, we did have one difficulty that we talked about with you on the track. where you were having trouble keeping up with some of the cars. Now we are talking, you have a relatively new Mazda Miata ND for this track event, not the highest horsepower car, not the, if I need to catch you, I'll just put my right foot down and you will be behind me. So you kind of have to, it's a momentum car. You got to keep everything going. Did that progressively get better through the week, or is it still a problem?
It did, but like I said, the only time I really felt I couldn't keep up was in the straightaway, because all the other ones in my class, I guess, were BMWs. So it just, that was a little tougher, and I probably could do well to learn a little bit more to be able to get faster on the straightaway with the shifting. So
I was thinking about it a little more, and we talked about originally my son Liam, well, Vicky's son too, I guess. Well, it's Vicky's son for sure, and it's questionable about me, but he does look like me. So am I editing this?
What the hell was that?
Perhaps I'll be editing this part out. But anyway, okay.
Jesus.
Note to editor: remove this. Okay. Well, one of the things that are we done? Are we done?
Moonwalking backwards. Go ahead.
There it is.
Go ahead.
Okay. One of the things that Liam had done when he was teaching you or giving you tips at your first or second race, I think it was never shift past like 4,000 and making you short shift, and in the Miata you need to shift, go all the way to the top because that's where it gets fast, and then you also don't drop down to where it's slow again. And then I was thinking about it again because we talked about that one, and the thing that you have to do in the Miata is you have to get your momentum through that turn, go through that turn as fast as you can so you don't slow down. You are a dead person if the person in front of you goes through the turn slow and then just takes off, because you can't go fast. Mm-hmm. So those are the two things that I was thinking about that may help you.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I got to get better at that. But yeah, I mean, this time I kind of felt by the time I got to the point to shift, it was me thinking about it, and then and then it's too late. So yeah, I have to really work on that. But after we talked about that, we went right into having the cones on the track. So
you didn't get to practice.
I didn't really get a chance to practice the track backwards, and then it was just unfamiliar. So yeah, I didn't really, after we had that conversation, it would have been nice to be able to go out there and practice.
I think you were asking about aha moments? Mm-hmm. What were you asking? Aha moments? No, mine was still not to be afraid of the car. That was my big aha moment. The one thing I had to remember, you know what, there was just so much data going through your head. And I know I brought that up before. You have so many things and so many mini conversations of what you're trying to do and trying to accomplish from what you learned in class, that it's really kind of fragmented as you're trying to piece it all together on the track. Mm-hmm. And and you do forget a lot of things as you're trying to focus on these other things. But my issue is that I had to remember also, as they said in class, is that your pedal should be to the floor whenever you can. Mm-hmm. To the floor.
Gas pedal.
The gas pedal, not the brake pedal. The gas pedal. Mm-hmm. So I realized no coast. Towards the end of my weekend with them, I realized, especially when I was on the last part of the track, the last race backwards, was that I didn't have my foot all the way down. So that was probably an issue that I was having. I did it on the long stretches, but for the most of the time, I didn't. And it would all depend on what gear you were in to actually press that to the floor. Yeah. So, yeah, I did my best. But I'm looking forward to the next one that we do.
So, this kind of brings me your brain swimming issue. Yes. Okay, so when you go to an HPDE, you get kind of, I could do that. I could do that. That would help me. That's why when I made the notebooks for you guys, I put the goal sheets on there so you would have one or two, at most 3 things Because if you go out there trying to solve world peace and hunger and everything, in addition to threshold braking and your turn-in point at turn 7, you have to trim it down and pick the things that need the most work. So,
but at the same time, it being the first HPDE of the season, you don't really know what those areas that you really want to work on yet until they really start sticking out and saying this is a sore spot and I can't continue onto these other things until I attack this. And you know, some of it all ties together, some of the very basics. I mean, I can understand with that concept of, you know, going into the second phase. Or even in your third class, but in your first class you're still trying to identify all those areas because you have problem with all of the areas and they all at some point have to tie in together. And my coach was really trying to push a lot, mostly on apexing and mostly on apexing and trying to do the car shift for me. But now I know when I do the second one, I know what I'll need to focus on and I'll know those trouble spots that I have.
Yeah, and I think the lead follow was a little bit more difficult to.
Yes,
it was just having to like stay as far apart as, you know, they specifically asked for. You know, it's just one more thing to think about the entire time.
Right.
I mean, usually when you're in a group of cars, you're thinking about passing that person, you pass that person, and then you're done. Where here it was just focus on staying in this one spot. So, you know, trying to think about all of the stuff in class to do also made it a little bit more difficult. Whereas I think if the instructor was in the car, he'd be like, okay, this is where you should be feeling this, and this is where you should be doing this.
He would be able to identify some issues that you're really, really having, saying, these are what we're going to focus on today because these are the areas that I see you struggling the most with. But with them not in that car with you, then you really can't point them out.
Okay, throughout the weekend, you guys would go out for a track stint, and then you would go get a debrief from your instructor, and then you would go to the classroom. Was there any coaching feedback post-driving or after the event that you need to work on?
Yeah, I believe I mentioned it earlier. It was throttle control through the turns.
What part of the throttle?
On,
off, hold?
Basically controlling the car more with the throttle than the brake is what they would rather me try to do. And the other one was trying to be tighter into my apexes.
So use all the track.
My car didn't use all the track.
So that's what you need to work on.
Right. It is that in this particular track, in my particular car, using the entire track was not beneficial because my car, at least in this aspect of it, because my instructor had a very small car also, and it was not beneficial for us to use the entire track because our cars reacted differently in certain parts of the track. When bigger cars with, solid differentials, I believe I have an independent differential.
Independent rear suspension.
Independent rear suspension. When some of the solid ones, and the bigger cars, they would perform better using the entire track than mine. Mm-hmm. So he told me.
I can't remember what he said. I know you asked him. But
yes, he punted with me, and he told me, "What do you think you need to?" And you're like, all of it.
Right. So, well, yeah. Okay. So, I guess after, my last one that we kind of stood with the coach. So, I just kind of felt like I needed to work on all of it, which he kind of agreed, I guess, because when I asked him, he said it was rhetorical. So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I actually had, NASA gives you a little blue book, and this year they're larger, and they've done them a little bit differently, where instead of just checking things off, they actually grade you in each section now, from a 1 to 5. 1 being very good, 5 being, you need improvement. So which I would think it would be in reverse, but
Yeah, we didn't do that book.
yeah, you had the book earlier, but I got mine right before we end up doing the last track free-for-all run. And I'm actually graded through most of it, but there's areas that I'm only midway because I'm just not confident with it. And I think a lot of it is confidence and trying to tie it all together.
All right. So, Vicki, why did you try to get arrested for stealing gas?
Yes, I almost got arrested for stealing gas.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't believe you brought that up. All right, so we went out for pizza one night while we're here in one of the small towns, and
South Haven.
Yeah.
South Haven?
no,
That was different.
no, it was
Moreau or something.
Oh,
yeah, but
right,
it was a little country town, and it pulled up to a gas station that looks like it hadn't been updated since the 80s, and a couple people outside, smoking cigarettes and dogs and stuff, and I had gone up to fill my gas tank up, and I put my card in, and it didn't accept it at first, but I already had that problem once before with our particular card at one of the other gas stations in another state or whatever. So I figured, okay, I'll just pop it back in again. And I did, and it just kind of gave me a funny reading, so I already had the gas pump in the car, so I just kind of squeezed it, and gas was coming out. I'm like, oh, I guess it just accepted my card. And I filled my gas tank up, and Bill came by and filled his gas tank up. Jennifer had already gone out to go grab part of our meals for our troop. So we, next thing I know, that we're over at the restaurant next door waiting in line, and Bill and I in the cars, and these two guys walk over, start taking pictures of our license plate. We're thinking, we got some pretty cool cars. So they're over there kind of saying, hey, cool car, and you got the numbers, what are you doing, da-da-da-da-da, and he comes by, and I'm like, why are you taking a picture of our license plate? He goes, because you stole gas. I'm like, what do you mean I stole gas? He said, no, you drove away without paying for gas. I'm like, but I paid for gas. I said, I'll be right over. I said, I didn't mean to steal your gas. I said, I'll be right over to pay for it.
All $8 of it.
Yeah, I literally think I spent like $7. So I went over there and I paid for it. She's like, oh, no, it's my fault too. Well, there was a reading on the other side of the gas pump that said, please see cashier not accepting cards, but it wasn't on my side of the gas pump. So
see.
I figured the gas was running, so it worked, and I was clear, but I just went back and paid for it. But no, they didn't try to arrest me. It was stupid.
So, Vicki tried to pilfer $7.50 in gas. So, if you see the wanted posters near GingerMan, just pretend you don't know that it's Vicki. That's all we're saying. All right, so track time. What did you guys think of the track overall?
I loved it. It was a fun track to drive. It really was.
When you're driving it at a slower speed, it's a cool track. It's a fun track. And it doesn't seem complicated. When you speed that sucker up, it becomes pretty technical.
Yeah.
It really kind of shocked me when we really started accelerating and maxing out the cars. There is very little elevation, but it is deceiving because the pitches in the track are subtle to see and to look at, but they make a big difference when you're driving on them.
So one of the things that came up during our track walk was camber. You guys want to take a shot at it? Okay. So camber is when the road pitches either to the left or to the right.
Yes.
Now, if the camber is pitching towards the apex, then that's called positive camber or helpful.
Right.
And if that camber is pitching away from the apex, that's called negative camber or devil.
That's up here, right?
Yes. So one of the things that was challenging about GingerMan was if you were on the line, there tended to be positive camber. But if you were off the line and wide, especially turn 10,
10B,
you are in the mud, in the swamp,
yeah,
going off as one guy did twice in level 2 in the first 2 segments. Way off.
3 maybe. I think 3 maybe has a little negative. Did they ever come up with that? And they were saying that, you got to watch out for 3 for sure.
Okay, so any favorite turns? Any turns that really floated your boat? The things that you thought, felt good to you?
I liked 3.
You like 3?
Yeah.
What did you like about 3?
I don't know. I like coming out of 3. It was a long turn, but I like coming out of it fast, or I don't know. Maybe because you cut it harder.
Did you go into 3 at the speed and turn late and get your nice late apex?
Yeah, I turned really late and really sharp there, and it was just really fun coming out of that one.
I kind of set you up because I have video of you doing it, so I know what you did, because that was one of the ones we could see from our where we were parked.
So was it bad?
No, it was good.
Okay.
You did good in 3. 2, we needed a little love, but how about you, Vicki? Any turns that felt like they were at home to you?
7, 8, and 9.
What about them?
Because if you hit them just right, you kind of swoop through them, and you need to use very little braking. And if you just curl up just a little bit on the accelerator, then it adjusted the weight of the car, and that's all the slowing that you would need, and you can still max all the way out.
In your car?
In my car.
Right. Okay, so just as there's always turns that feel good and homey, there's also turns that feel like somebody put my left shoe on my right foot.
10. 10.
Why?
I guess I hit it wrong because it was really hard, because it was the one that was
off camber.
Yeah.
In a big way.
Yeah.
We were messing around a lot with 5 and 6, which if you look at it, if you look at the map, it almost looks like a slanted laying down W, and it's the first pitch down in the valley. It's the longest, one of the longest tracks that's kind of swooped down. So 5, 6. In my car, there's 2 ways to hit that turn with the vehicles. You could either carousel it, which is kind of do a swoop through, or you can do a V, a diamond in it. And we were all playing around the best way of hitting that. And with the small cars, for us, it was better to hit the V at the very bottom at a little bit late, and then if you hit it just right and hit the second apex, you were able to charge out of that without having to take the apex wide, forcing you back up in the track, almost off the track a little bit and then back up. For us, it worked better because we were able, with the little cars, especially with the little cars with the turbos, we were able to get a jump coming out of that turn, versus why people were still trying to take it wide off. We were able to get a jump and head up track.
So for me, well, let me try this. What do you guys think? What do you think? What turn do you think I had trouble with? I'm not saying me, the greatness of me. I'm just saying, if you look at the track, you know how I drive. You guys have driven with me many times. Is there a turn that says, Bill doesn't like that turn?
3.
3? 3 is the tight one going downhill.
Mm-hmm.
Any guesses for Jen?
I
Jen doesn't guess.
There's a tree there.
Yeah, there is a tree there. you see the tree on the way when you're going reverse. That tree is right in your field of view. 8, 9. Just
really
drove me crazy. Could not get a good one there. 10, easy. 10B, sorry, easy. 11, piece of cake, straight right-hander, 90 degrees. 2 would be the next one that's tricky for me.
2 was tricky for me.
That was tricky for me too. That was a wide. That was just wide. That was tough.
Well, our instructor kept playing with that on weather, because the guy behind me, or on my team, he was driving I think it was
a Honda S2000.
A Honda S2000. Also, my instructor was driving a Honda. And we kept trying to hit that at different approaches to try to figure out what felt better for us, because there's many different ways of approaching that turn and going in and then coming out, whether you go in late or you go in early, because it is a long turn. You can hit it certain ways to get the most out of it. But
And part of it is
it's tricky.
when you come out of turn 1, you have to kind of throw the car over to the right. So, I mean, there's such a short straight right there between turn 1 going into 2 that.
And the blend line.
Yeah, I mean, and the blend line's there, so it's really a lot to think about coming through there.
Yeah, it was a little bit tricky. So, again, we were playing with a lot of turns on a lot of whether, going in late or going in early on some of them. And I don't really think we really settled on 2 very easily on which way is the best approach.
So one of the things that I think is tricky for the 2 that were causing me problems, 8 and 9 and 2, and I'm wondering if it's the same for you guys, where to turn in.
Yes.
Because that was the hardest part, because I couldn't find. Once I know where to turn in and I know my speed at the turn in, the rest of the turn's kind of taken care of. It's kind of decided, unless I've got to make a oh my correction. The rest of the turn is kind of decided. So is that the same case for you guys?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So your issue is not the turn of 2, it's the turn in of 2.
It's it's getting in the right position, and like I said, sometimes there's so many variables. How you're coming out of throwing your car to the right, coming out of turn 1, and if anybody's coming onto track, so because the blend line. So there's so many little things that can throw you off if you're just coming out of turn 1 onto that short straight.
I would agree.
So one of the things that this gets me to is hitting your apex is insufficient. It also matters the angle of the car as it hits apex, because you can hit the apex and be pointed. I'm doing this and it's hard to do, but if you're looking at 2, you can hit the apex and be pointed still at the stand way to the left, or you can hit the apex and be pointed straight down the straightaway, and that's really what you really want to be.
Yeah, my car also struggled between 2 and 3 because it was difficult for me to figure out whether I wanted to be in 3rd and 4th and how to approach turn 3. Because I could either hit it at max, it was such a short straightaway, I can either hit it at max at 4, or would I prefer going in with higher revs and stick it in 3 and then hit the turn. Actually, 3 worked better for me. 3rd gear. Oh.
I would think in your car you want to be going to 4, if not trying to get to 5.
Yeah, it didn't work for me. It didn't work.
All right. Well, neither one of us is exactly the resident pro at GingerMan. So I think we're looking for anything back there, and that would be fun. So, any of the turns that just felt icky? They didn't feel natural. Be it the turn, the approach. It could be even going it backwards. Did you notice any big difference between going forwards and backwards? Does any turn get significantly different, significantly harder, or significantly easier?
10B was a butt clencher.
Backwards or forwards?
Backwards. It was backwards.
Yeah, that didn't change that for me. That was still was crappy.
It was diamonds both ways.
Both ways.
Yeah, but honestly,
I think between 6 and 5 going backwards.
Switch.
It
got easier.
No, I thought the whole track was easier in reverse, pretty much. I liked it in reverse. I really did. I guess because I wasn't thinking about all the data.
So I was running data. And believe me, if you look at my lap times, forward is much better than backwards. There's a couple reasons why. Some of the runoff out of the turns are built for going forwards, and on the way, if you reverse it, the track is noticeably narrower. And then turn 3 gets to be interesting backwards because it's now a decreasing radius turn.
And there's a tree.
And there's a tree. Right at you.
And then
tree didn't go nowhere.
10A, 10B, you have a choice. You either go in there at the proper speed and start braking, going in there in a pretty good downhill situation, or you take the more conservative approach and brake on the uphill section and then just add some gas to get to the rest of it. So it was literally like 12 seconds difference for me speed wise. Okay. So I had a question. We are predominantly endurance racing people by what we've done. If you look at the total HPDE time versus the total track time racing on Lemons and Lucky Dog, we have more time racing actually. How are you guys with your turn-in points, your apexes, and your track-out points, and your beginning of braking points? Do you have them firmly established? Is it something that you think about? Is it something like on a scale of 1 to 10? How far are you down there? Are you
1 to 10, 5.
Which ones are harder for you?
All of them. It's all of them, because you have to link them all together, and that's the issue that I'm having with them, is making them all tie in together.
Right. I agree.
There's not one that's harder than the other. It's just making it come together.
So are you trying to get a fixed point, or are you just kind of doing it by feel?
It's difficult with a fixed point. It would be better if I drove the track, say, for instance, like NJMP. I am familiar with NJMP. I've driven NJMP in Jersey many times. I would know those fixed points, but just showing up at an HPDE and not knowing those fixed points and having to learn those fixed points and hitting those fixed points. My partner was there, half a dozen times. He's done all his endurance racing there. He knows all the fixed points. He knows how to hit those. I would say for us, being the level ones at a new track, that's just not coming together.
Skirts.
Well, not only that, like I said, when you're so focused on following the people in front of you, it's just one more, you know what I mean? I think you would have learned those focal points a lot earlier if you weren't.
Yeah.
If the instructor was in the car versus trying to follow.
I think that's why it was easier when our instructors were not on course. Because
not leading.
When they weren't leading, exactly, because we were able to look for those a lot faster, a lot easier.
Right.
Okay, so let's pretend that you guys were going to race this weekend at GingerMan with the Lemons crowd, which unfortunately we're not going to be allowed to. What turns would you try to focus on, and what would you? No.
All of them.
10
at once.
No, I would be all of them. I would be working on the entire track the whole time. But until I found one that I was very comfortable with, and that's when I would start playing with my car.
Did you find one this weekend? Is there one turn that you feel good about?
No, I can't say.
Jen, how about you? What do you think?
10 and 2 I'd work on.
Those would be the two you're going after?
Yeah.
Okay, 10 and 2. Kind of where your hand should be, almost like 9 and 3.
But then again, with endurance racing, once you're like 10 laps in with nobody...
It doesn't matter.
Well, no. Well, Lemons, it doesn't matter anyway. You're right, because it's very difficult to follow a line anyway. But I think that when you're Lemons and you... Okay, so we were able to go out with instruction, do about 5 laps, and then come in. And then we'd have to wait and do all of our stuff and whatever. And then you go out and you do like another 5 laps. But with endurance racing, once you do a solid 10 laps in, you start getting comfortable. You start adjusting. You start getting the feel of the car. And I think by the time you got 20 laps in, you're starting to really get that seat time in to make those progressions. But it was very difficult on a new track with 5 laps segmented to learn those things. And I think that's why the very ending, when you got the solid laps without your instructors, you were able to focus on the track in reverse. That's when it became fun and things started to click.
Well, one of the things that I think that we've all been trained through Lemons is we don't really care about what our turn-in point and even sometimes what our apex is, because,
only when there's nobody around,
because we don't get to do a turn with a turn-in point and an apex point clear.
Not until late Sunday. Not until late Sunday.
Yeah. So with the crowded track conditions, it's hard to there's a line, but you rarely get to use it for more than a couple turns at a time. So that's part of it. So we, as a team, I think one of our weak spots is we don't have these fixed points because we don't really ever get to use them. So why should we worry about it? And we do it more by feel.
Because then we progress up to Lucky Dog. And in Lucky Dog racing, when we race with them, they do use the line. And it would become very valuable there. But then again, the endurance racing that we do, the benefit that we get from that is that we become very, very conscious of what's happening around us. We become very, very defensive driving.
Track awareness.
We have, as Bill just said, a lot of track awareness, which does help us out when we're learning this also.
So one of the things they do in level 2 is they will run a black flag drill on every driver. And if you do not see the black flag, you cannot progress to level 3 no matter what. Okay. So we had one guy on our group who did not see the black flag for at least 2 laps. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like pointing at him, because there's one thing we know is do not miss a black flag, do not pass under yellow, do not collect your $200. We don't miss flags because the penalties are so big. One of the things I think...
Usually Alan.
So one of the things that I actually had trouble with at the HPDE, I know that we talked to Eric, and I saw Eric's webinar, and he was saying how you need to push it, be aggressive, don't worry about going off track, don't worry about spinning, don't worry about it.
Not in our kind of racing. If you even have one tire off track, you are black flag.
Right. So I still had trouble because I have my PTSD over tipping a flag, tipping one tire off. I never...
With Pagel in your face.
No, Pagel's not the problem. Pagel only checks my car and then says you're an idiot, but and then doesn't understand my question. John, we love you, but I didn't mean
Steve!
That. Steve, on the other hand, and Craigers.
Yeah, thank you.
So, they understand our pain. So, I didn't dip one tire into the dirt. I didn't go off, and it's one thing we're trained not to do. I mean, that's just so pushing to the 100% limit. I tried explaining it to my coach. They're like, well, you're not using all the track. And I said, listen, at the speed I was going, I didn't need to go all the way out there. I could have driven there to make you happy and said, yes, I hit the point where you want on track out. But speed-wise, I didn't need to go that far. So I don't. So anyway, but that was kind of fun. So I'd like to thank you guys. One last question. Are you ready to move up to level 2?
Nope.
No way.
How many times you think it'll take? I'm not getting a commitment. I'm just saying.
I would say I probably wouldn't be able to level up till next year.
Okay. Two or three more times then.
I would spend this entire year in level 1 to make sure that I got a solid base, and then the NASA would level me up. But I'm not going to be able. I won't predict that.
I was just asking for a feeling, not a prediction.
Oh, a feeling. I would have to say I'd have to probably do 5.
Okay. Jen, what you thinking?
I don't know. I guess until I feel comfortable that I know everything that's on the checklist.
Okay. So with that, I think we all had a great weekend. We had a great weekend actually driving the car, but we also had a great weekend on the side of not driving the car. Thank you, too, for both going out there. I know this is kind of far, and you guys were going into this thing. Why are we driving? Why are we driving so far to go to this thing? And I'm like, but we need to. So thanks again. Hopefully it was worth it. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Ben Dawson. This is the one that everybody's been waiting for. I think that you and I are actually saying the same thing. Okay. We just say it in a different way. So, it's come to my attention that getting to the apex of a turn is an insufficient condition. It actually matters not only to get to the apex, but the angle of the car at the apex is perhaps even more important than just hitting this fictional spot on the track. So what are your thoughts on that? And then we'll get into the discussion that I'm anticipating, which would be endless fun.
I mean, yeah. If it's just having your car at the apex of the corner doesn't mean you're doing it right. You could be backwards at the apex, right? True.
Ask
me how I know.
Not on purpose, but it has happened. So I think one of the things that you have said repeatedly is that you like to be early apex so that you can get back to the gas as quick as possible.
Right. Or
Right.
just maybe not a super early apex, but I want to have all my stuff done and I want to be back on the throttle across the apex, and usually that means a little bit earlier than trying a
get
late
it
apex.
get it done as early as possible, not as late as possible, not the typical track day, track out. So
to satisfy what you're saying, yeah, I mean that means I gotta have my car pointed the way I want to go. I need to get my car pointed at the apex, so it's not not coming broadside across the apex. I'm pointed toward track out and what's going to make me an extra straightaway. Is that part of what we're talking about?
Yeah, it is. I think what happens is, in my mind, I think, is your preference to have almost a point where you can go as straight as possible through the apex towards your track out? Is that kind of your goal? So you're trying to get your rotation done early?
Exactly. If I can be either getting into the throttle or just already full throttle coming straight across the apex, in my mind, I'm always thinking about just driving straight through an apex, which includes the inside curb and depending on the angle, it might include a couple of half a wheels inside the inside curb. You know what I mean? Whatever.
Right.
I'm just kind of is the quickest way to shoot through there, which might be I got to take a ton of curb, or I might just skip right past the curb. It doesn't always involve the curb, but it always involves me kind of thinking of it as I'm driving through what I see as the apex here.
So I guess my question is, if you picture a 90-degree turn, right? Your apex is really not on the inside of the track. It's actually in the middle of the track before the apex. What people would call.
I think you may be thinking about my big moment, the bigger moment of rotation.
Yes. Is it that
I'm doing
where
the
apex?
most work. I'm doing the most work before the apex.
You're getting your turn done early. And
that's the work I'm getting done before the apex. That's exactly right.
Right.
At least I think I am. I mean, you can probably watch my video and like, what's he talking about? But at least that's what I'm idealizing in my mind when I'm
in your head. Yeah. So I think you and I are actually saying the same thing, because I'm treating the apex as the innermost point of the turn where I go to the curbing the most.
Right.
But in the same instance, as I was fighting my earlier condition where I like to do my early turn in, I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to do it late. And what I was thinking was my point of maximum rotational angle change is almost the same thing as you're saying. And we actually are saying, I think we're saying the same thing. We're just defining our terms different.
Well, I mean, when you talk about a late apex, I mean, that literally means like, here's the shape of the apex. If I'm coming this way, instead of hitting this, this is the actual apex, or this would be the early apex. Apex, that means you're coming across the end of the actual apex, right?
Yep. The after the geometric.
Right. So here's the geometric, here's the early, here's the late. So I'm still talking about coming in, getting the car rotated. If I'm lucky, getting a little bit earlier, just right here coming across. But I'm never like trying to come around the back of the corner unless the course dictates it. That's the only way to get around like a decreasing radius corner would demand a really late apex or something like
that. But maybe it's a different term then. But you're trying to get your rotation done as quickly and early as possible so you can get back on it with our low horsepower cars typically.
Right.
And really, does it matter to you where you clip the curb? It matters more that you're on it early.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it matters where I clip the curb, because if it's, obviously if it's way too early, then I'm going to have to let off or overrun the track out. So, right. I mean, that's the main thing I'm thinking about. I'm just thinking about, hey, how can I get out of here and be back to flat-footed as quickly as I can, considering the curbing, considering the angle of the corner, considering what the exit looks like, that sort of thing.
Okay. So I've been doing some homework because I'm trying to keep up with my Dominating with Dawson. So I found this awesome podcast, and I'm going to bring this up while I'm looking. So there's this podcast that I listen to that is an instructor, and he has a podcast where he instructs motorcycle racers. And his name is Ken Hill. So some of the stuff doesn't apply, but I figure if anybody's going to know the bad signs of how to do things wrong on a racetrack, it's going to be a guy on a motorcycle before it's going to be a race car guy.
Those people are crazy. They got to know what messed up is.
Right. So what he referred to, which is something I hadn't seen or heard of yet, is there's 3 types of turns. There's entry turns, and then there's exit turns, and then there's neutral turns where it doesn't really matter. So on an entry turn, he worries more about carrying in the entry speed, right? And on an exit turn, he cares more about maximizing his exit speed.
What factors would you think would play into how you prioritize that?
Well, I think it depends on a little bit on what type of motorcycle he's got, but let's pretend we're talking about cars. It depends on what kind of car you have and what kind of grip you have and what kind of horsepower you have. But I think it could also depend on what's coming after the turn.
Ding, ding, ding.
Right? But,
or what led up to, or what led up to this?
What led up to it? Like if you're at the end of a really long straight and you're going into a series of turns, it's going to be an entry turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But I think the exit turn is more typical for what we do. More tracks have more exit turns. What
do you think an exit turn would be? Like turn 7 at Road Atlanta?
Turn 7 at Road Atlanta, turn 12, I'm sure there's 4 or 5 of them at VIR that you can quote, but
I didn't even bring it up this time. But there are turns where you want to prioritize how you get, like ones where like, hey, I don't really care how the entry of this turn goes, but I want to make sure I absolutely nail the exit. Right. Get on the gas as quick as possible, like turn 7 at Road Atlanta, because you might end up you come out of the turn 2 or 3 miles an hour faster when you really nail it. You get all the way out to that curbing, you're flat out, got the wheels straight faster. 2 or 3 miles an hour there can net a larger yield by the time you've gone through the gears and you're at the top end at the far end of the track before you brake. So
yeah,
that can be a bigger deal, and that's why people prioritize it, because they might be able to pull off a move that they weren't going to get if they didn't get that corner as well.
Right. So I think your natural early rotation, less concern about apex, is the more typical turn that's an exit turn.
Oh no, I am still absolutely concerned with hitting the geometrical apex or as close to it as I can. Like that's not something I'm compromising. It just might mean that I might back up my brake entry. Like somebody right next to me might be able to brake at the 2, but I'm going to brake at the 2.5 just to give myself enough time to get slowed, get the car turned the way I want, and then just be hauling it across the apex. I'm still going to locate my car at the apex as hard as I can. Like I'm still going to maximize the geometrical advantage. Just how I get there. I might not maximize my entry by braking at the very last second and turning where I've got the very, I think that the idea where you brake at the last second, then you're kind of hit your speed. What's the opposite of an apex? Is it nadir? N-A-D-I-R?
I think so.
So you hit your lowest speed right.
It's Latin.
That's your approach. If you're maximizing your entry, you're going to hit your lowest speed at the apex right where you pick up a throttle and come back through. Which is like the time trial approach. My approach is definitely, I'm always thinking about race traffic more. My approach is where I would rather kind of eat it a little bit on the way in, be pretty methodical about getting the rotation done and getting back on the throttle sooner than the people around me who are kind of trying to maximize their approach, because they might have beat me in the car. Still probably not likely, because I'm still probably better at it than they are. I'm still going to get in anyway. But what I'm saying is that you might lose a little bit on the entry, but you're going to come out harder. But I'm still going to locate and place the car at the apex, and I'm still going to hit the apex hard enough that at track out, I'm going to end up at track out whether I want to be out there or not. I'm not going to steer myself.
Yeah, you're not going to just drive. You're not going to drive.
The car's going to land out there. Yeah, right. I'm going to steer with my feet to get out there pretty much.
But wouldn't your typical approach to a turn have your minimum speed be prior to the apex?
I guess. Aren't people who are like, I'm braking all the way down to the apex and then right at the apex is where I pick up the throttle again? I think that's where they hit their lowest speed, right? I don't know. Well, I'm never thinking about that because I'm not trying to do that.
You kind of seem to be, you want to get to the gas as early as possible, ideally to maximize your exit speed. So I think, at least the way I've interpreted it and the way I've seen it in my head, is you're on the gas before you hit what the track apex is, but after where you've done your maximum rotation turn.
Yeah, I've already done the stuff where you have to get the slowest before the apex.
Yes.
Just so hopefully somebody else just had to slow down a little bit more than me. Just so hopefully I can get them on the way out. Like it's all a traffic strategy. I also know how to do it where you maximize your braking, you break down to the last second, all that sort of stuff. I can do it that way too, but typically, if I'm practicing or if I'm driving a race traffic, I'm prioritizing just trying to maybe make a little bit of an awkward entry just so I can really get as much throttle as I can. Maybe make myself a little bit of an extra bit of straightaway on the way out of the corner.
Yeah, lengthen the time at speed or time.
Yeah, lengthen the amount of time I'm wide open, because usually, like we always talk about, I'm usually driving a car that doesn't have that much power compared to the rest of somebody else in the field that I'm competitive with. So I'm usually just trying to maximize how much time I can have the wheels opened up, have the wheels straight, and the throttle pressed. So that's when you make your best time.
But you're still, when you're thinking about your throttle application, the way that the way that I've seen it taught is you turn the wheel to your maximum, and if you're at the limit, you can't press the gas until you start to unwind the wheel.
The whole thing that they should be proportional, right?
Well, you don't go back to gas until you're unwinding, because otherwise you're pushing your tires.
Oh, right, and that is the ideal, and that's something to live by 100% if you're trying to win your DE trophy, which is putting your car back on the trailer and never feeling uncomfortable. But no, I mean, there's definitely times where I've still got some steering angle that time. I'm jumping on the throttle like we talked about before. Like, turns are just something to get in between me and being wide open. You just got to handle it, because it's just, turns are just like speed bumps to me.
Yeah. Minimize the impact and maximize.
Yeah, so all I'm ever thinking about is how do I get my wheels straight again, and how do I get my foot back on the throttle? Like, anything between that is just some kind of inconvenience I got to deal with.
So Vicki and Jen, is that approach similar to what you guys do when you're coming to a turn, or? Because I'm not insulting you in any way. Ben's faster through turns than all of us. So
I'm not faster through turns
exactly.
than anybody. I'm the slowest person going through turns.
What is your feeling when you go into a turn, Jen?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, it depends
not
how many
again.
cars are there. Certainly at the HPDEs, it's a lot different, but in Lemons, sometimes it's crowded, so it can occasionally be terrifying. But I mean,
do you say cuss words when you're going into the turn?
No, I don't. I do not.
Vicki does.
But everything that you learn at the HPD does not apply, and you know that. So it's like
some of it does, but definitely driving. I think we've discussed that before. The driving.
The line, there is no line.
No, it's there.
Right.
You just can't use it.
Right.
Well, no, the line shows up on Sunday.
Yeah, after everybody crashes.
There's no line on Saturday.
Yeah, in my mind, what you're doing at an HPD event is you're just building a driving toolkit that you have with you all the time.
Right.
But then you can take to the race. But if you've done like 2 or 3 or just even a handful of HPD kind of events, your toolkit isn't very full yet. There's skills you're going to develop along the way. But it's absolutely worth doing. But I think definitely the stuff you pick up at a DE is way more useful than the stuff you're probably not learning in race traffic and limits. Like, it's fun to be in race traffic in an endurance race, but it's not a place to learn either. Like, I can understand being terrified if I went into this not knowing anything about driving. Like, I showed up kind of a pretty developed driver, but if I showed up not knowing anything, I would probably be pretty weirded out by all the traffic and limits.
Yeah.
that was our first HPDE.
Yeah.
I mean, that was our first Lemons race.
But there's plenty of people who do that. But I think if you find racing and you think like, oh, this is cool, I want to compete at this, then it's likely that the best way to go do it is to go do some HPDE events where you get an instructor in the car with you who can tell you like, all right, you can get away with this. Like, all right, we're going. Hey, you're not letting off the throttle again. Usually a good HPDE instructor is going to help you get quicker instead of like, all right, they'll help you get rid of your habits. Like, Vicki, no coasting. I'm going to let you just stay on. Like, I'll be in there like, hey, stay on the throttle. Don't get off that gas until I tell you. Usually that kind of thing. You have an instructor who helps calibrate your driving. Like, all right, here's what you can get away with in this car, because they know. They're like, all right, I'm going to get in the street car with somebody and have a pretty good idea of where they can get away with. And there are certainly times where I'm in the car with a student at an HPDE, and I'm like, I'm going to tell this guy to brake it to 5. And then he breaks it to 5, and then we got to drive 2 brake markers up in the corner. And I'm like, okay, well, this guy knows how to use the brake pedal. So, the instructor is always calibrating themselves to the student too. But, an HPD instructor can definitely help you get rid of some of the bad habits like no coasting, or all right, you can definitely get away with carrying this gear through this sort of thing.
Well, okay. Well, on the subject of the HPTE, when I had gone in with some of the bad habits that I knew I had, and of course they were pointed out, but I already knew that I had them. I think when I went into my HPDE, they usually have a checklist that, for you to complete in the Great Lakes one. Okay.
Yeah. So
but you really can't do them all. I mean, you can try, but it's probably best just to really focus and say, this is what I'm going to accomplish while I'm here. If I try to accomplish everything, it's just going to be a wreck.
Oh, right. That's totally
right.
So when I was doing NASA, they had a little book, like a little passport, like it was like
a
passport. So you get your passport filled out, and I think as you go through the different pages, maybe different items get added. But yeah, it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on there, and you want to approach what you're comfortable approaching at every HPDE. So I mean, if you're like, hey, I'm showing up this time. I've been working on threshold braking on the street. I think I got a good idea of that. I mean, yeah, it's everybody works that stuff at a different speed, but that's why that I think NASA's great for having that kind of that book. That's like, hey,
that book is great.
Skills. But yeah, but don't beat yourself up if you're not knocking everything out of the park the first time you show up. I mean, keep going to DEs. There's so much inherent value to them as far as developing you into a more competitive driver. Like not to say I'm Mario Andretti, but I showed up in this stuff already being pretty good at it, and I've had a blast doing it because it's just like, I'm just rolling on these fools who've never been to DE. So I don't know. I mean, that's one way to go dominate is to get really good at DEs and then keep racing too.
That's why when we were talking about going to the HPDE 1 with you and Jen, you're like, well, I already took HPDE 1. I'm like, well, just
no, we did. I did. I bulldozed. And I do apologize. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, just because you took it once doesn't mean you got everything you need to get out of it. Sometimes you need to hear the same thing twice, and sometimes a different instructor. And at least when I talked to the NASA head instructor, he said it usually takes 3, 4, 5 times on average before you progress up.
I definitely did every HPDE 1, 2, 3 group more than once. I think I was in HPDE 3 like for a while before I finally was like, hey, let me say the instructor clinic. So it's not a race, and it's not like they don't just give them away like they do black belts in the strip mall karate place. You know what I'm saying? It's a different deal. There's I think there's more life and death stuff at stake than there probably is at karate stuff we do. So hopefully, if you have a responsible NASA region and responsible instructors, they're working with you to help teach you and also being pretty safe. Because it's not a one and done thing where they just show up and like, all right, she did it one time. I definitely was in each one of those groups for more than one event for sure.
I had gone to Watkins Glen, and Watkins Glen was a bit of a scary track for me. I mean, it was a fun track, but it was a scary track at the same time.
Totally.
And I told my instructor, I said, I would rather not focus on speed as much as technique. So I chose not to go all out on that track and just really, really focus on my proper shifting and proper balance of the car more than I wanted to focus on other things.
Right.
So I actually took that track slower than I should have.
No, that's a great idea. If you show up to a DE and like, hey, here's what I want to focus on, you can tell your instructor that. Your instructors they've got the chops to like get you around the track. If you want to go around Watkins Glen at 90 miles an hour, that's what your instructor is there for. They'll watch at the back for you. They'll let you know when traffic is coming. But totally, no instructor is ever going to be like, we're not doing that. I mean, I've absolutely made drivers go like, all right, hey, we're just going to run the whole track in fourth gear. And of course, we're slow going around the track, but it's also a DE, so it's a lot of people get too worked up about I'm too slow or I'm not doing this or that at an HPDE. You paid a crap ton of money to go there, and so did everybody else. So if you don't get the point by right away, you got to give the other driver some slack. And by the same token, if you're behind some driver you think is really slow, everybody paid. Everybody's learning at a different rate and absorbing different information in different ways. So a lot of cases that I see that just all the time where I'm behind another car. You can tell that instructor is just talking to the other student around the track, and that's all they're doing is because you can see the instructor like we're talking to them. So it's real easy as an instructor. You get to watch all this stuff sort of happen in real time, but there's so much stuff going on at DE. Everybody paid to be there, so it's a great place to go learn, go be patient, and just absorb as much stuff as you can. And if you can, ride with people, for sure.
You did get a ton faster that weekend, by the way, Vicki, even though you weren't. Yeah. You said you weren't, but you did.
Yeah.
No, I think it's great to set limits. That's a really good idea. Like, hey, I'm not trying to go 130 down straightaway.
I'm not trying to tick off 5 or 6 things out of my book today. No,
Yeah, that's great.
I only want to do these are the areas that I'm uncomfortable with, and these are things I really feel like I need to master in order to move on to this other stuff to kind of tick in.
Yeah, I think it's great to show up with a focus. Like, how many racers do we all know from endurance racing who they're all great in so many different ways, but they're so unfocused that they just can't function as a team, or like they can't keep their car together. So one of the biggest things you can bring to the track is focus. So that's fantastic.
I'm right here, Ben. I can hear you. Jen, what do you think about approaching to turns? Is that kind of how you envision?
Yeah, I mean, Vicki has it right with technique, because I mean, if you have a really good technique, the speed will come. Do you know what I mean? Like, to do the speed before the technique, it doesn't work. Do you know? So I guess my only hope with all of the HPDEs that we do or have done is to work on just getting better at going into turns and coming out of turns, and because your speed will get faster if you do it right.
Yes.
So yeah,
technique breeds speed.
But I just want it to be natural enough that I don't have to think about it as much, because right now I yeah, exactly, like with driving a manual.
Do you drive a manual on the street, Jen?
I didn't learn how to drive a manual on the track.
Oh, wow. Oh, what an adventure. I can't imagine.
Okay, wait a minute. To be fair, I had a few hours on the road.
Okay, all right. Hey, that's great.
She had a week. She had 1 week.
That's wild.
I didn't say we had the best judgment sometimes.
No,
we actually sent a car down to Delaware for her to practice a stick, and we never took it back. So she still has the car.
So, but now it's muscle memory. Like now that's not the issue anymore. But like, forget about what an apex was when I got in the first race. It was, wait a minute, let me go into first gear.
Yeah, it's true that prioritizing a corner based on like all this sort of stuff we're talking about is kind of a little bit of high theory as far as when it comes to performance driving. Also, you did your first race, like, I'm just trying to find third gear. I'm just trying to keep the car from getting hit by other cars. We're sort of like sitting high up on a toadstool talking about, like, we need to prioritize this quarter. Like, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a whole lot more basic
I got to
stuff.
tell you, Jennifer even kept stalling on a particular hill going up. And when she would go up, the people in the booths would just raise their arms up and cheer for her because she made it up that turn.
Oh, my God.
Wait, was this New Hampshire or?
Yes.
New Hampshire.
When you said that going up a hill, I was like, I've never been there, but I'm like, that seems like the kind of place that would have a hill you might not make.
Yeah, they're up there going, come on, you can do it. Yeah. She made it up and they would cheer her because she did it.
I did it.
Oh, that is why I love Lemons so much. Is that story right there? Like, it's such a fun series just for stuff like that.
Because a man would never be able to walk out of that unashamed.
Oh, I wouldn't care. It wouldn't bother me at all. I think that's so much fun. Like, but
I'm
I love
quite sure when they said that was like one of her first races. I'm sure they really appreciated it even more.
No, but that's great. That's a great thing about Lemons is it could be your first day driving a stick. It could be your first day ever sitting in a race car, and you're out racing.
Or all of the above.
Yeah, I love it.
Trial by fire.
But yes, my hope for the HPDE is to commit enough muscle memory to not have to think about it as much while I'm racing.
Yeah, you want all of that blocking and tackling kind of stuff to be just mechanical. You want it to be automatic. So that way, once you got that stuff down, then it's just all head games in traffic. You're just every turn, I am messing with people. Like, I don't know if everybody gets that, but like once you get good at this stuff and you can drive faster than some of the other people, it's like, I am just going to screw with them endlessly, and that's what I do.
But then there's getting into a different car each time too, because that's been an issue.
Oh, see, I've got a bucket here that I call this bucket of blessings. And I put getting to drive different cars and getting to drive in the wet and all these kind of stuff. I put all that into the bucket of blessings. Where's your bucket?
just think about how much you're learning with all these different vehicles. But
Yeah.
you're doing
I
a
know,
crash
but-
course in it.
Part of my anxiety is coming because you get used to one vehicle and then you get in another one and it's different and it's
The differences make it great.
She was very disappointed when she got out of the car she was practicing on in Delaware. And she gets into the race truck and says, "This clutch is totally different."
What?
That's like a second gen.
Yeah. Yeah. It was.
Those transmissions are so weird too. In that generation of truck.
Yeah. So she's going from a BMW to a Chevy S10. I'm like, yeah, they are different. Yep. A little bit.
You know, I bet there's like no rushing to shift in that truck, is there?
No. Don't bother. It won't matter.
Or steering it.
Yeah, or steering.
Brakes are on fire on occasion.
No.
Why do you
We
keep
think we
bringing
might
that
have
up?
fixed the brake problem. We're hoping we fixed the brake problem.
Very well. We're going to see how this goes. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Ben.
Thank you.
Right.